Welcome back. One presidential candidate has been very outspoken since the attacks in Paris, Ohio Governor John Kasich, sending out a strong message to supporters in New Hampshire. Destroy ISIS. The governor saying we cannot afford to wait for the outcome of the 2016 presidential election to be able to act. Joining us tonight, right now, is Ohio Governor and Republican presidential candidate John Kasich. Governor, good to see you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
You have called on the U.S. to go toward Article 5 with NATO. Explain exactly what you are proposing, Governor.
Well, you know, after 9/11, France wanted to join with us on Article 5, which basically says an attack on one member of NATO is an attack that affects all of us. And in this case, I think Article 5 ought to be implemented, which means that all NATO members would assist France as they move to protect themselves and to root out the terrorists. I think it's a very important and very strong message. And furthermore, Maria, I think the president ought to go to Europe, and I think he ought to convene a meeting not only to drive forward on Article 5, but also we need better coordinated intelligence worldwide, and I think we better be doing joint planning in terms of the need for military action to destroy ISIS, and would not only just involve NATO, but of course we would also want to work with some of our allies in the Middle East, whether it's the Jordanians and the Saudis. But, you know, we just can't keep waiting. I've been arguing about the need to do boots on the ground now as part of a coalition, an international coalition, for a long time. And, of course, the no-fly zones are important in Syria because that will provide some sanctuary for people in Syria who are, you know, whose lives have been virtually destroyed by war. There's so many things we need to do, but joint intelligence, working with the French, working with NATO, and I must also say, Maria, we have to be very careful that we dedicate the resources we need right here at home in things like the joint terrorism task forces that we have across the country. The ability to develop human intelligence. This is really, really critical, not just overseas, but we've got to have people here who know what's happening. And then signal intelligence,
right,
which is the ability to be in these chat rooms and to know what's happening while still protecting the rights of Americans.
Now, of course, we know that the president is in Europe right now. He's at the G20 summit in Turkey. We do not know if he will go to France after the G20 meeting, which, of course, ends on Monday, tomorrow. So in terms of a plan for the United States, tell us what you would like to see in terms of boots on the ground. What should the U.S.'s response to this deadly attack in Paris be, given that you say that an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all?
Well, this is something where we would rally behind the French and be able to work with them, whether it's logistics, whether it's some sort of military action, where we are all united. But I don't think that's going to be enough, Maria. I think it's also important, as I say, to build an international coalition. NATO is fine, and NATO is good, and NATO is critical here, and frankly, it needs to be strengthened. We all need to work together more closely because we can see what happens when we're really not united. But it's also important that we include countries that are in the region. And, you know, what first jumps out at you, of course, are the Saudis, perhaps the Jordanians. I think they would join a coalition. And in the meantime, I mean, the least that the administration can do is to make sure that the Kurds are very well armed. They have been taking the fight to ISIS in Iraq. Really, really critical that the Kurds are strong. And, you know, people say why. It's because they've been defending their homeland for so long. And why do they like the United States? Because we have been helping them to protect their own homeland. And the Kurds are really critical in all this. And it's complicated as well because there are disagreements within NATO, particularly with Turkey, in regard to the Kurds. But we need Turkey to understand that the Kurds are a critical element in this in terms of taking on ISIS.
Right.
I don't know whether we can convince them of that, but there are a number of things that we can do. And I really do think we need to have those no-fly zones, both on the Turkish border and also on the Jordanian border.
Well, what about refugees, sir? How many refugees should the United States be taking in right now?
Well, look, we should only take refugees in if we can affirm. This is not like a negative thing, you know, like we say, well, I didn't do this, I didn't do that.
Right.
It would be incumbent on people to prove who they are so that we would be certain, because we can't be in a position of inviting the enemy in. And frankly, we better be careful about looking at Americans that have traveled Americans themselves who have traveled back and forth. Look, I think it's important when we do the no-fly zone, we're now providing a sanctuary, Maria, that would hopefully if we would do that, we would cut down on the number of refugees leaving a war-torn area.
Right.
At the same time, we can provide the resources to the Jordanians and perhaps the Saudis, the humanitarian and the kind of financial resources to stop or to stem the flow.
Yep.
There's so many things we need to do, and frankly, we're behind the curve, and I think that's why people are frustrated worldwide.
We're going to talk about the solutions or the answers that we got last night from the
Maria,
Democratic
one other
candidates.
thing.
Real quick, Governor.
There's one other. Yeah, the other issue is, look, we can win this battle on the battlefield with bullets, but we have to win this battle with the battle of ideas. We have to show that the Western civilization stands for something, that lives have meaning, that we have to live lives greater than ourselves, so that people can have purpose throughout the West and representing that Western ethic. This is really critical.
Governor, thank you.
Is important. Okay, thank you, Maria.
It sure is. Governor Kasich, thank you so much.